Why should I invest in Pakenham?
And the vacancy rates, if anyone just needs to look at what's happening at the vacancy rates, it's like dropping off a cliff.
The numbers do not make sense.
There is genuine investments happening in this area. Why would investments happen in this area? Why would councils be willing to put in millions and tens of millions of dollars? Is because they can see that population growth happening.
Another great area in Melbourne you should have your eyes on as a property investor. In this episode, we're going to go through a suburb called Pakenham. And for the insights, I've of course got Melbourne's best expert, Adi, good friend of mine. How are you, man?
I'm good, man. Thank you. This is exciting to talk about the suburb because I don't think I've heard it talked about ever in a long time, at least. So I'm excited about it.
I got to admit, I didn't know too much about this until we started doing our research.
Yep.
I also didn't see too many signs of it, and I didn't drive past it on my Melbourne trip. So I'm really looking forward to learning a little bit about it from you. Tell me, why should I invest in Pakenham? And how much money do I need to invest in Pakenham?
$650.
$650? That's pretty good, man.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, if you can bump that up to $700, you're getting better quality stock, like maybe one more bedroom in there. The reason I'm loving Pakenham I wouldn't say is a hot market, right? I know we did this other episode about Frankston, and Frankston is transitioning to a hot market. Pakenham doesn't have that story yet, but I can see that transition happening, right? I want to revisit this conversation 6 months from now and tell you about what's happening in Pakenham.
Just let me unpack this beforehand. Pakenham homeowners, you are welcome. Last time this oracle did that, he completely changed Carrum Downs and everyone just there made another 50, 60, 70 grand, 10% on their property values. Adi, I'm obviously overblowing it. You didn't change all of that. But
9%.
When you pick up on an area like this and you identify it, quite often it does actually have that story change to it. So tell me a little bit more. I'm now interested because this man has runs on the board and he's come out to bat and he's picked his next area, Pakenham. Tell me a bit more.
It's a beautiful part of town. Firstly, it's in the southeastern suburbs. Yeah, it's a beautiful part of town. It's very owner-occupier dominant. I love that. There's just this appeal. There's just this, the infrastructure that's gone in, the parks. There's just like a really nice visual appeal. Now, of course, I'm not talking about data. I'm the data guy, but it's just a nice place to be, right? That's the first thing. Now, what actually got me onto Pakenham is I started seeing a shift in the number of people that were attending inspections. It's actually a really good marker of what's happening in a market on the ground. Every Saturday, if you want to, go to one of the inspections and just see what the foot traffic is. That foot traffic is now increasing in Pakenham. Pakenham and Frankston, they're actually not that far apart, right? They're actually not that far apart from each other, maybe 10, 15-minute drive. So what I've seen in Pakenham now is that the foot traffic at these inspections is completely different. So that was a great indicator. And you know who picked up on this is our Melbourne specialist, Sim. Shout out, Sim. For picking that up. And I can start seeing that reflected in the data because we're now getting that 620, 630K price point becoming quite popular amongst first home buyers because they're like, wow, it's still quite affordable. And it's the reason I'm loving it for investors because it's not just a first home buyer appeal. The reason I'm loving it for investors, I'm seeing yields like 4.2%. Which is fantastic.
Good, right?
Fantastic. And these are like block sizes of like 700, 750. Wow. Yeah, we're seeing some really decent block sizes in Pakenham. And the vacancy rates, if anyone just needs to look at what's happening at the vacancy rates, it's like dropping off a cliff. What does that mean? Your rents are going to keep increasing. So that 4% is going to be 4.5, 5%. I'm loving that Pakenham story. It's becoming expensive for the local renters to rent that property. What's going to happen is the next wave of owner occupiers are going to come in because it's like, why am I paying $600 for a property when I can just go in with a first home buyer's grant and go pick up this property for $620, $630?
Yeah,
it's a logical move.
Yep.
And that's the little inflection that I've seen in Pakenham. I saw this in Frankston 7, 8, 9 months ago, and we already know what's happening in Frankston. Again, we're just at the start of this sort of cycle.
It's wizard.
Pakenham is even earlier in that cycle. So if you can get in, your competition is less. You're not sort of fighting against 20 or other offers at the moment. Maybe it's only 3 or 4 offers.
Yes.
You can be strategically placed. You can probably lowball and probably get away with it. Not too much, I would say. So it's a different dynamic. And suddenly, I can I know I'm going to sit down with you in October or November, and we're going to have a discussion about what's happening in Pakenham, and it's going to be a very different story.
Wow.
I'm excited.
You touched on so many wonderful concepts there. The shoe index, the shoey. For those that watch racing, they'll understand this one, where you go to inspections and you just check how many shoes are at the front and being like, what? There's so many shoes here. What's going on? Homeowners, a little secret for you. If you want to make it look like your inspection's busy, just from the outside, just lay out all your shoes at the front. Being like, mixing the data up. That would be cool. And the second bit that you touched on was the whole Melbourne story about the you're talking about it in the micro sense, in Pakenham sense, but it's the macro story of, with interest rate cuts that are coming this year, the shift in the buyer mind of many Pakenhamites.
I don't think they've ever been called that before.
Pakenhamites. Pac-Man. I love it.
The Pac-Men and women.
The
Pac person.
People in these areas, the Melbourneites that live in and around here, they're going to be like, maybe I should buy instead of rent because the rent has gone up so much and the interest rate cost has come down and the calculations are tilting and we're like, oh. And when these calculations tilt to be like owning a home in Melbourne on a 700 square meter block on a house gets the same yield as renting, that's ridiculous. That just doesn't make sense. You get into that framework of the numbers do not make sense, and it's 100 bips of rate cuts will tilt that for areas like this.
Correct.
And could easily lead to a pretty sharp appreciation in prices as it sort of revalues to where it's supposed to be.
Correct.
I think you're hitting on some really good points here. Can you tell us a little bit about Pakenham? What else do we know about it? Give our audience some colour.
So Pakenham is on the fringe of sort of like the southeastern pocket. Like it's next to places like Berwick, Beaconsfield, Officer. Those are typically considered to be the more premium end of that pocket. Pakenham is not what you would call premium. I really like it, visually appealing. Like I said, it is. But there are sort of better known suburbs that surround it. So there is a lot of like spillover effect that happens in Pakenham. Mm-hmm. When those, Berwick becomes a little bit out of reach, Berwick is sort of like that 850K price point. Mm-hmm. But like I said, you can still go to Pakenham and buy something for 200K cheaper. So there's this spillover effect that happens in Pakenham, and it's surrounded by really premium suburbs, similar to the Frankston story. The Seaford of the Frankston LGA is a more premium aspect of Frankston, where you can pick up a house in Frankston for 750. Seaford, you're looking at something in the sort of mid 800s. So it's that dynamic at play here. It's like I said, there's like a real owner occupier appeal to it. So some great schools there. There are multiple schools there. Pakenham is actually a really big area. There's some great schools there that local sort of families are really keen to send their kids to. We are seeing a really big shift, at least some of the competition that we have seen over the past couple of months that we've started sort of looking at Pakenham. A lot of first home buyers are sort of attracted towards Pakenham. And I think we are seeing a shift in people being able to access this market when it just wasn't accessible previously. And I think there's that little shift that is happening. And we're talking to a lot of people. So, Sim actually attends a lot of these inspections. She talks to the people walking through the properties, and it's all like young people. They're people in their 20s and their 30s, and suddenly, they can get a metro sort of property for 600, 620. And it's a completely different story to where it was maybe 6 months ago. So I'm loving it. It's fully established as well. So I think if you got the chance on your Melbourne trip to go through Pakenham, you would see something similar. There's not a lot of development happening. Building approvals are sitting at like 0.5%. There's not a lot of infill. There's not a lot of that extra development that's happening. It happened over the last 10 years. So there was a lot of stock that came into the market, but it's completely being absorbed now. Now it's just sort of low supply, high demand, or increasing demand.
Yes.
Which is really, really cool. It historically did have a lot of green estates, like a greenfield estates, like I said, but they're all sort of established pockets now. My parents live in Lynbrook, which is not that far from Pakenham. It had a very similar story over the last 10 years. It had a lot of development that happened. All the development's done now. There's nothing else to be developed. It's just my parents' house just incrementally goes up every year. It's the same Pakenham story. There is quite a bit of development happening in Pakenham as well, which is sort of quite exciting, I think, for the local population. So there's some really cool developments happening as well. So there's the East Pakenham precinct. It's bringing, a bunch of sort of 4 new schools to the to the place, new town centre, there's new parks coming. There's a community hospital that's scheduled to be built in 2026, which is obviously going to bring an influx of healthcare workers, et cetera, into the market. Again, changing that. It's that gentrification story because high income earners are starting to come into the market because there is that new hospital. There's a South Employment Precinct as well. It's like 185 hectares of industrial land, which I believe is going to bring in something like 3,500 jobs.
These are
into
around the
Pakenham.
Pakenham areas. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. But it's going to have
So
that
Pakenham.
impact
For sure.
in Pakenham in general.
So good, where it's right next to it, but not actually yet.
So I think what this tells me is if you sort of look across some of that development that I just spoke about, it tells you that there is genuine investments happening in this area. Why would investments happen in this area? Why would councils be willing to put in millions and tens of millions of dollars? Is because they can see that population growth happening. Where's the population growth happening? Because it's affordable. People want to live in this area. It's established. It's near, it takes about, I think, an hour on the train station. Pakenham is a really great train station. It takes about an hour to get into the city. It's well connected. It's sort of got everything you need as a first home buyer or a young couple starting on their journey. So it ticks a lot of those boxes. And the developments are happening, are underpinning a lot of that as well. So I'm excited about Pakenham. It tells the data story really well, and it tells the macro story really well as well.
I think it's got a lot going for it.
It does.
For a little while now, we have been unpacking and uncovering the entire Melbourne market, Darwin market, Mildura market, whole range of markets to help you choose where you should buy your next investment property. And really, to answer the question we get asked the most and delivering you exactly what you want, because you have all asked for this. So we keep doing this, going through suburb by suburb, area by area, trying to help you put a lens into different areas. And we've done this on a few different suburbs, Carrum Downs, Frankston, Seaford, a whole range of areas all across Melbourne. I've got to know the Melbourne market really, really well. Adi, the legend, thank you so much. I love how your team is now giving us these awesome reports, all these research reports there with so much better quality data. It's really feeding into the podcast. Pretty amazing to go through this with you. Pakenham, great spot to invest in and look at if you're a property investor looking to make your next move. Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching. I've just noticed that about a quarter of you have actually subscribed to our channel, but 3/4 of you have not. Could you all do me a favor? If you're watching this podcast on YouTube right now or Spotify, could you hit that subscribe button, that follow button, that bell notification, and leave a 5-star review? If you can, if you're a regular viewer on Spotify, it'll really help us grow this channel and spread the word to more and more Australians looking to get ahead with their financial future.